So after winning a Peabody Award for his GBH News podcast, The Big Dig, podcast producer Ian Coss is back with a brand new limited series centered on another key aspect of Massachusetts life, the wildly successful, we'll discuss what successful means in a few minutes, state lottery. The podcast is called Scratch and Win. First two episodes are out now wherever you listen to podcasts. Episode 1 is now available on our own podcast feed, and they drop every Wednesday. Is that right? That's what you told me?
That's right.
Episode 3. Okay. Ian, we're happy Ian's here, but let's tell the truth. We're wild about the other guests. Dawn Hayes is here. And if you're hearing that name saying, where do I know that woman from? This may help jog your memory. Here it is.
Now, live on WBZ4, tonight's drawing of Megabucks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Hayes. I'm Dawn Hayes. I'm Dawn Hayes. Welcome to Lottery Live on 4. It's time for Megabucks. Tonight's jackpot is estimated at $3 million.
$2.5 million.
$15 million. Let's take a look and see if you'll be our next Megabucks millionaire.
Ian and Dawn, congratulations and welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Thank you so much.
Before we even start, I just want to say, where's Jamie? Jamie is our lead producer,
Who's
Dawn.
at the montage?
When he was 9 years old, he said to his grandmother, I want to marry that woman. And you were that woman. I want you.
That's right.
There's Jamie right there.
That's right.
Love you, Jamie.
He fell in love with you when he
And
was in
maybe
the
you
third
too,
grade.
Ian, but not then, whatever. So.
Okay. So, Ian, tell us what you're doing here.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is explain what to me is a strange mystery. I grew up in Massachusetts. I played scratch tickets since I was a kid. I didn't know until fairly recently that Massachusetts operates what is widely considered the gold standard of American lotteries. And what I mean by that is that we have the strange distinction of spending more per capita on lottery tickets than any other state, and it's not even close, right? It's
Fill in that blank, if you would, for us. It is stunning.
Okay, so if you just look at sales per adult, right? Lottery sales per adult, and you kind of map out the states, you get a spread, as you'd expect. There's a lot of states in the kind of like the $200, $300, $400 range. That's $400 per adult of lottery tickets sold every year. In Massachusetts, it's over $1,000, okay? Over $1,000 of lottery sales per adult. And you figure there's a few zeros averaged into that, right?
Exactly right.
So there's some very, very large numbers averaged in as well. And when I learned that, it seemed so strange to me. It didn't really fit with a lot of the image I had of my home state. And I just got interested in why is that? And that's really the question we're trying to answer in the series.
I thought you said it was all about the Catholics and bingo.
That is part of it.
That's a great story. Do you want to share that with us for a minute too, Ian?
This was another tidbit that I never saw coming. But if you look at the original lottery states, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, where the whole lottery phenomenon started, and then you look at the demographic breakdown of states by religion, they line up almost perfectly, and that the original lottery states are all heavily Catholic.
There you go.
And so there is a deep kind of cultural religious connection there between Catholicism and a kind of tolerance for legal gambling, which again, Massachusetts, a very heavily Catholic state, makes perfect sense that we would have one of the first lotteries and one of the biggest.
As opposed to the Protestants, you say, who...
The Puritans.
Right. Well, you figure the classic Protestant work ethic. Well, like, what's the antithesis of working hard for your pay at the end of the day? Well, I don't know.
What are the great lines? What are the great lines? You're going to tell me who said it because I've forgotten. But the Catholics have children. The Protestants have dogs.
Yes.
Okay, who said that?
That quote is from Mayor Michael Curley.
Okay.
That's a way back reference in Boston politics. I heard it from a fellow named Larry DeCara.
Larry DeCara, okay.
Yeah.
Former city councilor.
That was
now,
great.
Dawn, you're going to be in a later episode we haven't heard yet. But can we go back to those thrilling days of yesteryear? How'd you get that job that everybody, when I say everybody, if you're really young, you don't know this, everybody saw Dawn at night on television. How'd you get the job?
It was actually amazing. I mean, I'm sure there are a number of people in our audience that auditioned for it as well. But long story short, back in the day, every 3 years, the lottery had to go out for bid to the stations. So it was at one station, and then WNEV wanted to get it. So they did this huge cold call where about 4,000 people came out to various parts of the state. I went to the West End, right up the street here, and auditioned. And from 4,000, it went down, long story short, to 26.
4,000.
Yeah, there were psychological tests. They would call our boss at the time. I was working for WVBF as the assistant to the CEO, and got down to 16. We had the finals at the Westin, and I was the first runner-up. I did not win. A woman named Andy Waugh, people may remember.
Would you kneecap her, or what'd you do? What'd you do?
Well, no, but I paid close attention and started doing a little freelance work for the station at the time. She did it for a year, and it didn't quite work out.
Oh, I didn't know this.
filled in for her.
Funny coincidence.
It is.
It didn't work out.
Yeah.
Wonder why she got sick.
And then you got it.
And then I got it.
How many
And,
years did you do that thing?
About 18.
You know, I used to, one of my closest friends, who obviously passed away, well, it was Chet Curtis, who obviously was huge
Yes,
in TV.
Chet.
Chet and I would walk down the street, and I don't care if you're 15 or 115, he was stopped by people. That was what your life had to be like.
It was
Did it not?
awesome. It was awesome. I don't know if you remember back in the day, the Q rating.
Oh, sure, of
Yeah,
course.
so at one
Explain
point-
what the Q rating is to the
The Q
audience.
rating is, they used to have, what would you call it?
It's like a recognizability.
Yes.
And
So-
favorability
and-
with the public of
right.
celebrities and high-profile people. Yeah.
Exactly. So Chet and Natalie, those types would be like 1 and 2, but I ended up being number 3
Is
for
that
a
right?
while.
Wow.
So number 3. I'm so.
Well, you know, it's so funny because last night, you know, our coworkers sent us pictures, you know, our stuff for today, and I looked at the video. I said, "My God, I've seen this woman hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times." Because if anybody in your family, Channel 4, they had the Wheel of Fortune, and other, that it would be every single night.
Yep.
You'd have a new outfit every single night.
Yep.
And we were all very excited watching the little numbers twirl around. But you couldn't play, I bet, could you?
Actually, I could.
You could.
Because I worked for the station. I did not work for the
Okay,
lottery. So
okay.
lottery employees could not play. But it was the happiest job. It was an awesome job. I really loved it.
So we're going to get back to you because I think a lot of people, including me, I want to know what you're doing now that you're not doing that lottery thing at night. I was not aware that we weren't the first lottery until I heard episode 1. I was also not aware that the scratch ticket was not what lottery started with.
Yep.
And you do these wonderful interviews with this guy who created the first scratch ticket.
Yep.
Let's say, is it Koza? Is how he says?
Yep.
Josh Koza. We'll play a little sound so you get a feel for the guy. And then
John Koza.
Oh, John Koza. My apologies. And then fill in some blanks. Tell us how it
Awesome.
came about. Here is John Koza, creator of the first scratch ticket ever.
Now, mind you, this was the very first ticket. As you can see, it was not very artistic.
Yeah, I mean, the first ticket looks more like a receipt or something. It's not
A receipt, yeah, that's
It's not
right.
very
It's
glamorous
wor-
looking at all.
It's not glamorous at all. Very boxy and wordy. It says 1 in 5 tickets wins, and then it says using edge of coin, rub square spot at right, and a number appears. So we had to tell people that.
So tell the story, Ian, briefly, if you can. How did this all come about? How did this guy come about?
Yeah, so if you go back to the early 70s, the first generation of lotteries, what they had were basically weekly drawings, okay? There was no daily drawings on TV. There was no Megabucks, Powerball. And in Massachusetts, they had this thing called The Game. It was literally that generic. It was just The Game, one drawing once a week. And I think part of what you have to remember about those early lotteries is that they were terrified of looking bad. There was so much fear that the lotteries could be infiltrated by the mob, that somebody would rig a drawing, that there'd be some kind of scandal, and the whole thing would get shut down. So nobody wanted to try anything new. Along comes this fellow named John Koza. He works for a game company in Chicago that made what were called supermarket games. It's, you go and you get a little coupon, and it's just like maybe you win a few pennies and you scratch off some spots and get it. So it's just like a fun gimmick. He comes along and he pitches this idea to all the state lotteries in the early 70s. Now, he goes from state to state, New Jersey, New York, and every state says no because they don't want to try this crazy thing. And then he comes to Massachusetts. And the funny thing is that in Massachusetts, the head of the lottery was actually a mathematician. He was this fellow named Dr. Peralt who loved statistics. He was an avid card player. He used to go and take his children to Las Vegas on family vacations just to study the games, and he was so into it. And he was the one person who saw the potential of it. All the other states just saw the risk, oh my gosh, there's a million ways this could go wrong. And Massachusetts was the one state willing to take a chance on it. And that's how we end up with the first scratch ticket, May 29th, 1974, almost exactly 50 years ago.
I'm not going to give it away, but he didn't get the first contract. Somebody else got the first contract.
There's a few twists
Right.
and
And
winds to the story.
How he ended up getting the contract, the ultimate contract, is a great story that Ian tells beautifully on Scratch and Win.
But I was telling Ian before we went on the air how you are a big anti-lottery.
I
You
am.
think it's terrible that everybody, people from Chelsea at Port Town spend all the money and they get nothing, and then people in Weston get all the money.
And spend nothing.
The legislature could change that. They
could.
They haven't. But
The distribution
but-
part of it they
but-
could
but-
change, yeah.
But the first episode does start off with a kind of a harrowing. It's a great scene of a guy over in Joe's Variety or something, spending his money. So tell us about how it opened there.
Yeah, and this was eye-opening for me. When like I said, I grew up playing scratch tickets. My mom would buy them at the gas station. When we do Easter egg hunts.
Yeah.
There would be scratch tickets.
Stocking gifts.
It was that kind of thing for me. And so when I started researching, trying to explain that huge $1,000 per adult figure, I looked up a list of the top lottery retailers in the state, and I figured, let me just go visit and see what's going on. So I wind up at this place called Joe's Market in Quincy, and I go there a few times, and the second time I go, I meet this fellow who did not want to tell me his name, but he was a mechanic, he lived nearby, and he would come in and play these $50 scratch tickets, right, which is now the most expensive scratch ticket you can buy in this country. And he would play one, and then he would go back up, and he'd be like, maybe just one more. And then he would go and he'd scratch it. And the thing that really, one of the things that, and I'm not sure if this is in the podcast or not, but it really opened my eyes, is like, he wouldn't actually scratch every box. He would just skip right to the bottom. There's a barcode. You can just scratch off the barcode and scan it. And to me, that was someone who had enjoyed scratch tickets, it's like it's a fun game. I realized, okay, it's something else for this guy. And I spent, maybe 20, 30 minutes as you went back and forth to the table, to the counter, to the table, to the counter, spending probably $500 or $600 in the span of his lunch break.
And he said he was trying to get money to retire, and he didn't want his wife to know what he was doing.
That's what he described to me, is that he's been playing for so long at this point that he was not able to save for retirement, and so this is what he's counting on.
Okay, let's not give any more away except to say Marjorie and I, on the second night that Plainview or Plainville was
told
open,
them.
we went to the VIP slot room. That's the first slot parlor open in Massachusetts. And Marjorie, who was then working at the Globe or the Herald, started interviewing the one guy in the VIP room who was literally popping $100 bills into these machine, disappeared. Another 100, another 100. Marjorie says, what do you do? I'm an unemployed carpenter.
Yeah.
And he probably dropped $2,000 into that machine that night. Okay, let's get back to you for a second. What do you do? You're not on my TV every night, which is really
I know.
concerning. What do you do?
What I'm doing is amazing work. I work for a fantastic organization called JVS Boston. I'm the vice president of philanthropy,
Oh,
and
great.
we do workforce development very timely for refugees, immigrants, and marginalized people. We're one of the largest in the state.
How
And
worried
it's-
are
it's
you? Seriously.
Seriously worried.
Yeah.
It's been a tough week.
Because people are
but-
scared.
Because people are scared.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to navigate through that.
JVS, is that the name again?
JVS Boston.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I
well,
get
let's
back?
get-
No. I
let's-
want
all
to
right.
get. I have a question for him that
Okay.
you say repeatedly in the first, and I am obsessed with the lottery. Maybe not as much as you now, and I hate every part of it, but I love your storytelling. You call it the most successful.
Yeah.
Now I assume that you don't define it, at least in the first episode. Most successful, I assume, means raises the most money and returns either the greatest amount of money or the greatest percentage of the ticket to cities and towns, which is a good thing to fund cops and firefighters. Is that what you mean by most successful?
I think in some ways I'm trying to be a little
Vague?
provocative
Oh,
and vague
provocative, okay.
in using the word successful, because that is a word that it can mean a lot of different things. The way it's usually used in reference to the lottery is that it makes more money per resident than any other lottery. As a
Which
business,
means they lose more money than any other lottery.
Right.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but as a business, which ultimately I think that's how you need to think of the lottery,
Yeah,
is that as a business operating within the state government, it is considered the most successful. And I think I just wanted, my hope for the series is that, however you feel about it, whether you come to it from a critical mindset or whether you come to it thinking that this is a great entertainment and, I hope that it gives you a chance to kind of sit with that and question for yourself.
Well, by the way, I've only heard 2 episodes, and the answer is it does it already. So I think you're on your way to achieving that goal. It's great.
Okay, we're talking about Scratch and Win. It's this new GBH podcast put together by Peabody Award-winning. That's a big deal there. Ian Coss, who did the Big Dig podcast, which I also just adored. If you love politics around Massachusetts, you're going to love this one too. And we're also talking with Dawn Hayes, that everyone would recognize because she was on television every night of the week. Was it every night of the week or just was it weekends
I
too?
was 5 days.
5 days
Yeah.
a week, okay. Talking about who won the lottery that night. So I want to know, okay, what was his job like? You show up, you look gorgeous, you have a beautiful outfit on, and then you go home, or what was the deal? I mean, how long was your work day?
As
That's
opposed to
what I wanna
what, go out and get drunk?
well,
What do
I
you mean?
want to know. I used to think, did she do something else, or is this what she did? It was
That's
a
what I
pretty
did.
good gig.
It was a fabulous gig.
And then would you go like to lottery events and meet people? and-
Absolutely. As the spokesperson entailed much more than just the TV
That's what I
aspect.
figured, yeah.
We would travel, we would go to different shops and stores and dealers and give away tickets. And in the middle of all that was a 3-year game show called Bonus Bonanza. I don't know
That's
if you
right.
remember that.
That's right.
Which I co-hosted with Brian Tracy.
That's right.
So,
Did you ever stand with one of those big, huge checks? You know, I always.
Absolutely,
Oh.
absolutely. We gave away more money. That's why I was thrilled to come when Ian called me. I was like, I'm happy to talk about it. It was a great gig. It made people happy.
It did.
Well, that's one of the things you were talking about.
Some.
Bob Crane, who's no longer with us, used to be the state treasurer, as you pointed out, real showman. You know, you had a great interview about him with the late great Jack Connors, who just passed away a little while ago. But that was one of the enticements, apparently, for for Crane. He wanted to give away these checks and make people happy.
Absolutely, yeah. And Bob Crane, for folks who don't remember him or maybe too young to remember him, he's such a fascinating character in state political lore.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a showman. He was the son of a vaudeville entertainer, or his father worked as a behind-the-scenes tech person for vaudeville shows, and that was his world, was song and dance. And so when he was tasked with running the lottery, I think he understood more so than most states. It's entertainment.
That's right. It's
You
entertainment.
play at least twice, I think, in the first 2, him singing "You Made Me Love You,"
Yes.
and I've seen him on video singing at Bill Bolger's, St. Patrick's Day breakfast in South Boston. But just sitting and listening, it was really it's almost beautiful in an odd sort of way. It's really
Well, we should tell the
great.
great story.
Well, no, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't?
I think.
About the
why don't you ask
stickers?
the guy if he wants to give
You want
it
to tell
away,
the sticker story?
or do you want people to listen?
Oh, sure, I'm happy to tell.
Oh,
them.
Tell the
great,
sticker
then
story.
tell
I
it.
love
It's
this.
fabulous.
Good
Because
Okay.
Frank Phillips, Renee Loth from the Globe, I heard them both talking about
And
this.
Larry
They're both-
DeCara, right? Is
Larry
that-
DeCara.
you mix them all,
All
yeah.
politicians, well, Frank Phillips and Renee Loth, the reporters.
And our current Secretary of State.
Oh, Bill Galvin. That's
That
right.
Bill
I'm sorry.
Galvin, that's right.
Yeah.
So this is a story. I should preface it by saying it may be entirely apocryphal, but it is part of
Great.
the lore. So the lore is that Bob Crane was a state rep in Brighton. He was running for re-election. And that year, it was 1960, and so he goes off and he campaigns for Jack Kennedy. He's figured, my race is safe, I'm fine, I'll go help Kennedy get elected. His fellow Irish Catholic
That's
Pole,
right.
And so, meanwhile, there's a challenger in his district who decides, I can take this guy. Runs as a write-in candidate, okay? Crane never sees it coming. Day of the election, it is extremely close, okay, with this write-in candidate. It goes for a recount. The ballots are stored for the weekend in a school or maybe a church in Brighton, and this is where the accounts start to differ. I got various accounts of this. And as the story goes, Crane knew the person who was the overnight custodian at this church or school, turned up the heat to, say, 80, 90 degrees. The glue on the ballots with the write-in candidates used to give out stickers.
So you just stick them onto the
Yeah,
ballot rather than having to
exactly.
write out the name.
To make sure that the spelling
Yeah.
is right. So all these ballots with the write-in candidate have a sticker on them. You turn up the heat, the glue starts to melt, the stickers fall off, they recount, voila, Bob Crane wins.
We
I
have a little
hope it's
sound.
true.
We have a little
That's a great
sound
story.
from.
And I have that straight from Secretary Galvin, with the asterisk that it may be entirely false and that Crane always denied it.
You know what you do beautifully too, by the way? The fact that you have all 3 of them interspersed telling the same story is
Yeah,
really
it's great.
beautiful.
Well, it truly
sound.
was a game of telephone. So the first person who told it to me was Renee Loth at
Former
the Globe.
editorial page editor of
And
the
she was
Globe.
like, I heard this story once. I heard it from Frank Phillips. You should talk to him.
Former State House Bureau Chief.
So
of
I
the
talked to
Globe.
Frank Phillips, and he's like, well, I really heard the story from Bill
Bill
Galvin.
Galvin.
You should talk to him.
That's great.
So I put in a request with the Secretary's office and got it from him. And then the trail kind of went cold from there.
It was a great story. In any case, here is from the podcast, business mogul Jack Connors, who just died a few months ago, who, speaking of philanthropy, was one of the great philanthropists in our time, and big ad guy, describing his longtime friend, State Treasurer Bob Crane.
When you think about the job of state treasurer, you're thinking about a banker. Bob was not a banker. Bob was a people guy. Bob was a showman. Bob was an entertainer. He never saw a camera he couldn't fall in love with.
So, what are we going to hear? What stories you're telling in the next 6 episodes?
Just something quickly about Jack Connors.
sure,
we
of
heard
course.
this. I just wanted to say, you mentioned Jack Connors passed away this year. And I want to give a lot of credit to Jack Connors and also to Don and so many of the folks who worked within the lottery for taking the time to talk about this story. Because I understand, as we talked about before, this remains a controversial topic. And there were a lot of people, including the Lottery Commission itself, that refused to talk to me about it, that just see this as
Really?
like a no-win situation to even talk about.
That drives me nuts.
And so I
by
just
the
want
way.
to, again, recognize Don,
Right.
Jack
Thank you.
Connors,
Thank
a lot of the other folks who did talk to me, who believe that it's worth having
Is
the
that a
conversation.
stigma kind of thing about gambling? Is that what it is?
I think the stigma and the fact that, that they're worried about this coming across as a hit job on the lottery, and
Oh,
that
okay.
I'm just out to criticize what they do.
Okay.
No, I'll just criticize what they
So-
do. You just
You're
tell the
out to do a
story.
hit
So,
job on
Don,
the lottery.
So,
I want to know, so they paid for your outfits, I hope.
Yeah, it evolved over the years.
Yeah,
But
okay.
yes,
Because
yeah.
you had some great outfits.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you always look fantastic.
These are the important things.
okay, can you two
Absolutely.
talk after the show? Okay.
Take this offline.
What's going to happen in the final 6 episodes? What are you giving us?
Okay, so we're going to trace it all the way through the 70s and 80s. We have the debut of the first numbers game. We've got a whole episode about organized crime, and if anyone remembers the Angiulo brothers.
Oh,
No.
the Angela Brothers, too.
Whitey Bulger.
I
Yeah.
drew that number.
You
did?
I drew that number.
Oh,
Yep.
Mike, wait a minute. Which one?
This is
Angela or
Bulger
Whitey?
brother?
Whitey, where he had to
Said-
take a ticket
Bulger
from the other
won.
friend
That's
of his.
right.
Yeah.
I remember
Can't
that
wait.
incident when they
Yeah.
went and got that
But
ticket.
go ahead, Ian. What else?
We've got a whole episode about state finances, Proposition 2.5, which you'll probably remember.
I think I do.
We've got a whole episode about advertising for the lottery. Got a whole episode about state politics. I don't know if you
that's
remember the
great.
1986 race between Treasurer Crane and Joyce Hampers.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
How about that for a blast from the past?
Blast from the past.
So we've got a whole, there are a bunch of twists left in the story. And again, we're kind of chasing that question of how did Massachusetts get to #1 in sales? Because it was not right away. It took
Okay.
a lot of effort and a lot of twists and turns.
Now,
telling you.
Kelly from Woburn says, Dawn Hayes taught me how to ride a motorcycle.
Woo!
Is that true?
I
Really?
did, yeah. I am a certified motorcycle
You
safety
are.
instructor, nationally
Oh,
certified.
wow.
Okay, well, we can't get enough of you. Here is, from the podcast in the future, here is Ian interviewing Dawn about, well, you'll hear what it's about. Here are Ian and Dawn.
Lottery drawings were held in prime time, right after Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
So it was the hottest time slot.
And so long, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning us in. Big finale tomorrow on Jeopardy!
Once that red light went on, you're open to the world. I'm in your living room.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dawn Hayes, and welcome to Lottery Live. Well, you made it. It's Wednesday, and the weekend is in sight. Hopefully, the weather.
I even remember the music.
I remember the music. It was like a blast from the past.
Were you about to say one last thing, Ian?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you're good. You're great,
Thank
and
you.
the
Thank
first
you
2
so much.
episodes of this are just,
Yeah.
I don't care if you care about the lottery or not, it's a huge thing in our lives in Massachusetts. Listen to it, it's brilliant. You really did a great job,
And
Ian, you and your
congratulations,
colleagues.
4,000
Great.
people, and you beat them all. I mean, that's
right?
really impressive.
That's the real
Thank-
story here. And
Yeah.
that's coming up in episode 6.
It is, episode
Oh,
6.
good.
We'll
Oh,
be
good.
there.
You get
Oh,
the whole
good.
Dawn story in
Okay.
there, so stay tuned.